Right, hello. So obviously this is going to be the Thursday stream. I'm going to stream for about an hour. I'll just wait for a few more people to get on into the comments. If you like my videos, don't forget to like the stream please by clicking the like button down below. It helps more people seem to get sent the stream, because it seems when people don't click like, it doesn't go out to as many people. So what you might notice is the lighting looks a bit better, and the reason for that is because there's a big light I've bought for all my videos now. So as well as the ceiling light I've got on and the other lamp, I've got on a softbox light, which is basically a big kind of photography bulb light thing. I'll show it in a minute when there's a few more people on the stream. I'll see if I can twist the camera around to show it. Tell you what, I'll pull it a little bit closer first of all, if the lead will go far enough, because I've not got this on an extension lead at the moment. I've just got it plugged into a wall socket. So let's get this as close as it will go. That's about as safely close as I can get it without pulling at anything. So obviously you should be able to see now that that's lit quite well, because I've got like soft diffused light. So, if I just show you it on the camera, it's probably going to wipe the camera out a moment. There you go. As you can see, there's a big tall studio light over there, plugged in at the wall, but it's on its own tripod, and it's basically a bulb and sort of like a reflective surface inside there. Right, now I have to go to all the trouble of getting the webcam correct again, because that's the problem. As soon as you adjust the webcam, it never goes back right, so let me sort that out, because we want the Lee Enfield at the top of the frame ideally. Is that about right? I think that's about right. Oh, there's a window on that side of me, but the curtains are drawn and it's night time anyway. Well, it's gone 7 o'clock and it's dark at this time of year. But obviously this means for pretty much all the videos I film from this point forwards with my regular camcorder using the tripod, the lighting will look a lot better, because I've still not figured out the perfect position for it. But what I can do is probably have this behind the tripod, and then obviously as well as the room lights being on and whatever, I've got this casting out a lot of light, so it means the camera should focus better and everything should just look better, because I've got so much more light in the frame. Yeah, there's an FN FOW, it's a British L1A1 SLR, which is the British version of the FOW, hanging up vertically, the one hanging up horizontally is the Lee Enfield. Well, funnily enough, it's mentioning the Cold Steel Gladius, there's one right there, but I can't really get it out at the moment. But yeah, I've done videos on the Gladius. Either eBay or Amazon, same place I got mine. Probably around 2009, I'd guess. Maybe 2010. Yeah, it's real. I'd recommend it if you want like a cheap thrusting sword. I wouldn't really recommend it if you want a machete for heavy brush clearing sort of work. No, I've got like the Sheffield thing that's like an Israeli caber. It's got a bit of dust on it, and I'll have to clean it off at some point, but there you go. It's very similar to a K-bar, this. You know, like a big Bowie knife, but yeah, I thought I'd stream about an hour earlier today, just so a few more people might see it who sometimes say it's too late for them to watch it at the other time. Oh, it's just the stream's just where we just chat about stuff, really. There's no theme to it. People generally use it as a Q&A kind of thing. They ask questions, I'll answer them. Or, you know, if there's a subject that's particularly interesting to talk about, we can talk about it. But yeah, I've already said the Enfield's real. It's deactivated, but it's a real rifle. So at the moment I'm just obviously waiting for some more comments to come in so I can actually answer them. So yeah, I'm gonna go for about an hour on this stream, so we're 6 minutes in, so another 54 minutes. Yeah, I'm alright, thank you. It's not actually a nice wall, but if you mean some of the things on the wall are nice, yes they are. Alright, thank you. Now, as I've said, it's deactivated, so it won't have a firing pin in. There's other bits they've welded, which means it's inert. In theory, they could be reactivated, but that's breaking the law, and I'd never do it. Somewhere between 90 and 100 Panzer IV, I'd guess. Or Panzer VI, sorry. Yeah, that's a katana next to the arming sword. I've already said, Richard, one's been mounted, the other one I still need to shave the pole down more for, so I've shaved it down a bit more since last week. I could mount it technically at the moment, but it wouldn't be a very good fit, so I need to shave more off, but I get hand cramp after, you know, like shaving it for like 10 odd minutes at a time. So, and I don't have the proper tools to do it any other way than shaving it with a knife. Read the description, toxic kid. I'm gonna actually have to put that back in, aren't I, because that way at least people might actually read it. Right, I'm just going to send Mike a message, because I did tell him I'd be on today, and he said he'd watch, but I haven't seen him turn up yet, so I'm just going to send him a reminder, in case he's not got a notification. Right, there we go, that's that message sent. Favourite style of bayonets? I personally like the really big kind of dagger style ones, but the issue is, as I've said before, is in the UK it seems to be really hard to get bayonets. Not that it's illegal to buy them, but just lots of places don't sell them, so you generally have to pay way too much for them. Well, if you watch enough of my videos T55, you'll probably see. But I can't think of much else. Like some video games, but I'm not a fan of most modern video games. Saying that, with the Resident Evil 2 remake, there's actually a first-person mod that looks really good, somebody's made, so I might try and get that installed at some point and maybe play some of that on a stream. Maybe on Monday, first person. The issue is, generally when I stream games, a lot less people watch them when I do a webcam stream. So that ends up meaning that obviously, as much as I might enjoy streaming that, a lot less people end up watching it because I just guess they don't care about games. Yeah, that's not necessarily going to make an airtight seal though, put an Israeli filter on a GP5. It depends on how you've got the washers set up on it. And if anyone's wondering, I've got the stream set up as a live chat, so I should hopefully see all the messages. Well, I won't see all the messages because sometimes YouTube hides them, but I'll see as many messages as I actually, you know, can see at my end. Really hard one though, I don't want to get into politics of Killer Pac-Man. Oh, sorry to hear that, Georgia. Yeah, hopefully the stream will cheer you up. I mean, I don't know really what to say, because it's just the usual stream where I'm waiting for interesting questions to come in, and When you say GPM, do you mean GP5M, Dean? Out of all those, GP5M, if you're going to include that one, but if you didn't mean a GP5M, just GP5. GP4 is not as good as a GP5, GP7 is too complicated for its own good. My favourite Soviet mask is the SHMS, or the Shums, however it's pronounced, the sniper mask. AK-74, just because the sort of 545 by 39mm is probably a better cartridge in terms of like ballistics, you know, it being a flatter round. The problem with the 7.62 by 39mm is as powerful it is over a short range, it falls off quite drastically. So if you look at sort of illustrations that show you the firing arcs, or like you know, pictures that explain the firing arcs of the cartridges, 7.62 by 39mm gets much harder to accurately shoot at further ranges because the drop off gets bigger and bigger, whereas 5.45 by 39mm for a much further range, you know, falls off kind of diagonally like that, where, you know, you can just aim a bit higher for a bit. I would say RPG 7, simply for the fact that it's got reusable heads. I'm not sure if the light anti-tank, you know, like law type one, if it's actually reusable, is it? Because I know some of them were like throw away once you'd fired it out the tube. The thing is with the RPG 7 as well, there's like loads of different head designs for it. Like there's the there's like the fragmentation anti-personnel ones, there's the standard heat ones for tanks. And I mean, speaking of RPGs, there's obviously much better, more modern RPGs, like the, I can't remember what the number is, but it's the one called the Vampire. When I type in RPG Vampire into Google, it thinks I mean Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. RPG 29, that's the one. Adopted by the Soviet Army in 1989, it was the last RPG to be adopted by the Soviet military before the fall of the Soviet Union. It's been replaced by the RPG 30 and RPG 32. The RPG 29 has been implicated in an attack on the British Challenger 2, as well as in attacks on Israeli Merkava tanks in Lebanon, which breached the tank's armour and in some cases injured or killed members of the crew. So it's actually got a really good penetrating head, because an RPG 7 wouldn't stand a chance of going through a Challenger 2. Alright, cool, Mike, I might see it. I'm picking my friend up from work tonight, but tonight and tomorrow are the last shifts he's doing there, so he's hopefully working with me soon. He's applied to, you know, work where I work. But yeah, if I'm around and you're on Twitch or whatever, I'll definitely join in. Oh, that's cool, Mike. I'm going to be going off about 8 PM anyway, because I was going to be streaming from like 7 to 8 PM. Dragunov definitely, just because it's got a more powerful cartridge. And it would have tighter tolerances, because the Dragunov's obviously designed as kind of like a marksman's rifle, whereas the SKS is just a very generic infantry rifle. I've never watched T-Series videos, but he's like the Indian guy, isn't he, that's been in the subscriber battle with PewDiePie. You can tell how much I don't actually watch all the big YouTube news kind of thing, but PewDiePie just simply because I've actually liked some of his more recent videos in the last couple of years. You know, where he's got more kind of into the offensive comedy kind of thing, rather than necessarily streaming games. I've actually enjoyed his videos a lot more. 1911 out of those two, but as I always say, the Browning High Power is my favourite out of all those sort of classic military pistols. And as always with the AK-47 versus M16 question, M16 over the AK-47, but AK-74 over the M16. For most of the reasons I went into earlier, that the AK-74 in my opinion is just a superior cartridge that it uses, and the AK-74 has a few kind of advancement over the AKM. Foul easily. I mean, you can probably tell that because there's one on my wall. G3 is not bad, but the G3 was only made because Germany wasn't allowed to make the FAO on production license, basically, if you know the history of it. Yeah, I mean, in the cupboard, I might do a video on this if it interests people. It's not something I'd normally consider doing a video on, but I might show what sort of food I keep in the cupboard. I'm doing a video on survival flapjacks at some point. Let's see when that goes live, because I've quite gotten into baking a lot recently just to make a load of food using cheap raw ingredients. Let's have a look. What day does it go live? February the 17th, so it's in 10 days time, and that is next Sunday, not this Sunday but next Sunday. So that's showing you how to make, you know, like flapjack that'd be very good as a rations pack kind of thing, you know, that's going to have loads of calories in, lots of fat, lots of protein, you know, and lots of simple and complex carbs. So a good food where you can just, you know, eat a chunk of flapjack and it'll keep you going for hours. But yeah, what I might do if it interests people is do a video on like what sort of stuff we keep in the cupboard, because as I've probably said to people a lot of times before, like I do prepping for a couple of weeks at a time, but not more than that, and the stuff in the cupboard is like a combination of tinned foods or canned foods, like biscuit kind of things, crisps, things like rice and flour and oats that, you know, keep for ages and they're very simple. Obviously there is stuff in the fridge as well, but the sort of cupboard is made up of a lot of different things that, you know, will keep for a long time if you actually need food in the kind of survival type thing. As I've said before, I'm really not interested in military rations. I've had lots of people offer to send them me. I have no interest in them. There's so many channels that do MRE videos, just watch those. Yep, we've got quite a lot of tea bags in the cupboard. I mean, I drink more coffee now than tea, but I don't think our tea bags are going to run out anytime soon. Like, it would probably take us like a year to get through all the tea bags that are in the cupboard, because we just end up, you know, like buying a new giant box of tea bags. Rare military equipment, that's a good one. Let me have a think. Well, it's not particularly rare, but what I definitely like is the old bayonets for those Lee Enfields, the one that's like a short sword that attaches to the, you know, bayonet lug. But I have to try and think of something that's rare. I mean, the thing I'd like the most, but obviously I'm not going to get one, and if I did, I'd probably try and find some museum that could look after it properly, would be the American Mickey Mouse gas mask, just because it's the rarest gas mask in the world. Yeah, nuts are very good. I've said that before, Richard, with stuff, because the thing is with nuts is they're very good for both protein and fat. It's like one of those foods for people who are vegans that they can actually eat, you know, lots of like cashews or whatever else, and they're very good for giving you lots of good vitamins and having lots of, you know, being almost an equivalent of meat really. But nuts store well, you know, you can get all different types, you know. I quite like World War II weapons. I prefer a lot of the Cold War stuff, but yeah, World War II I find interesting. It's just, I think the problem with World War II for me is it's just such an oversaturated thing, as in everybody always talks about World War II, just because I guess it was the biggest war in human history. But, you know, so it ends up just being, as much as I sound like a hipster, everybody talks about World War II all the time. Yeah, it's a very interesting looking mask, Jerry. Yeah, the P38's a nice looking pistol. Out of all the German pistols of World War II, I think the Luger looks the coolest, although I can understand that the Luger's probably the least practical and the P38 probably is the most practical. Yeah, like the C96 and Luger aren't going to be as practical as the P38. But out of all the World War II pistols, the Browning High Power is definitely my favourite in terms of, I think, it being, you know, simply the best pistol of World War II. I already have a black GP5M, and I don't accept anything sent to me by people because there's no way of confirming that people are genuine and not going to cause trouble. If I could have one live weapon, I take it you mean, because I can have lots of things like swords and things like that anyway in the UK, as you can see behind me. A live SLR, just because I really like the rifle and the history behind it, and it's sort of a jack-of-all-trades rifle. You know, it's a bit too heavy, it's a bit too long, but it's got very good range, it's accurate enough, you know, it's very easy to keep it running. I find conspiracy theory stuff quite interesting, but obviously I don't want to get too much into conspiracies on streams, because I try and steer away from politics whenever I can. Just because, you know, I don't want a shitstorm starting where I start talking about something like that and then it offending loads of people or people choosing to get offended. But when you say free will, do you mean like more like philosophical concepts? Because I suppose free will is more of a philosophical thing rather than an actual conspiracy theory in the sense of, you know, like people plotting against other people. I assume she means by free will whether or not you're actually in, like, you know, you're making decisions over your own actions or whatever, or was everything pre-planned out for you, that kind of thing. It's often one of those like religious philosophical arguments. Do humans have free will? My favourite Russian vehicle is probably the Shilka ZSU-23 for, you know, the anti-aircraft gun with the 423mm cannons on it. Another Russian vehicle I really like is the BTR-152, like the really old sort of APC armoured car type thing. Because I like those sort of things like that, and the British Humber Pig, the old kind of APCs you can actually drive on the road, assuming you had like a license to drive a vehicle as heavy as them, because they are basically just big cars but are armoured. Let me go back. Favourite Russian weapons? If we're just going to talk about small arms, because then it's probably just going to be the AKM for how iconic it is. Yeah, so that's not really a conspiracy theory, it's more like the philosophical kind of debate over free will, where you don't really know if you're making your decisions or not. I think free will, people definitely have free will to an extent, because you can always make choices, and you can obviously make the wrong choices. I don't think everything's pre-planned out for people like that, no. My favourite tank is probably the T-72 series. I don't actually have a longsword, but I've got a sabre. In terms of all-round versatility, a longsword is probably better than a sabre. Especially if you're on about a curved sabre, because with a longsword you can obviously both thrust and slash. With a sabre you can't really thrust very well with them, you can only slash. If it's a curved sabre anyway. So for stuff like that, longsword, but obviously sabres became a bit better in terms of like having better handguards and like stuff like that. That's why I like things like falchions, you know, where they've got really nice handguards that are effective, you know, like combat suitable handguards, and losing my train of thought a bit, but you know, like they've got the sort of slightly curved but could still thrust kind of blades, or the straight blades with enough weight to them that you could slash well enough. Steel toe cap I definitely like more often. I don't really have the problem of finding that boots are too heavy for me. I mean, yeah, if you're walking, if you're on your feet all day, you'd probably rather have a lighter pair of boots than a heavier pair of boots, but I personally don't find that, you know, like the slight difference in weight between a steel or synthetic toe cap boot and a boot which doesn't have toe caps is big enough that I'd actually want to go for the boots that offer less protection. Alright, Bosley? I don't actually know much about like modern Humvees. I mean, like as I said, I prefer the more armoured vehicles rather than like the very lightly armoured Land Rover kind of 4x4s. No, I'm not really into trucks, but I know about Pinzgauers because they're quite famous, aren't they? Alright, Mike? 'Cause don't you get some of the Pinzgauers as well that have like, they're kind of a bit like the half tracks, where some of them have like regular wheels as well as like the tracked wheels on them. Yeah, Deadly Assault Stream. But you might notice the lighting's a bit better because, as I was saying to some people earlier in the stream, I've got a my diffuser lights come now, so it's the big softbox light. So I'll turn the camera around again, but annoyingly it means it'll probably be really irritating to put back into the position it was. But there you go. I've got a big, as you can see on the, I'll just pick that up a minute. There's a tripod there, like if you look at the floor, and it's got a cable into it, and it's a big diffuser light, so it's basically a bulb in there with kind of foil stuff, and then you have like a sheet of sort of translucent, I guess it's not really transparent, but translucent plastic that goes over it, so then you know, it makes a soft diffusal of light. That's not too bad actually. The webcam's gone roughly back into the position I want. But if I flick that off a minute, you'll see just how much better it looks having it on, not having it on. Yeah, I went for a big one mic rather than going for one of the little ones, just because I thought it's not too much more expensive once you end up going over 20 quid. Like, that was about £30, so I thought I'd rather, you know, go up to like the 30 odd quid mark and get like a proper photography style one, even if it takes up a bit more room, which I don't really have, than just going for like a little LED one that, you know, if I wanted a little LED one, in all honesty, I could probably just tape a flashlight to my camcorder and just turn the flashlight on while I was recording. But because this diffuses light properly and sends it over a wide area, it works out. I'll tell you what, I'll flick off this lamp a second. So I'm going to flick off the little lamp that's in the corner. You've barely noticed that get dimmer, have you, because of how bright that is. And I'll flick that off a second and you'll see how much more bluer it looks, because obviously now you're just going to see the light being given off by the screen and everything, so I'm going to look really blue. So as you can see, I look really blue now, because obviously you're seeing much more the screen's light. Now my Sony camcorder is definitely better than the webcam in terms of making not brilliant lighting look good, but obviously if I flick the diffuser light back on, you can probably see now that the lighting looks a lot more naturalistic. American pineapple out of those, just because like it's the, you know, frag grenade kind of design that's kept going. Yeah, it's like a very bright white light, but it's not an unpleasant white light. I mean, you wouldn't want to stare directly into it, that would hurt your eyes. But in terms of being, you know, like the actual colour it gives off, I'll flick the ceiling light off in the room as well, just to show you how bright it is on its own. Right, that's just that one light now, casting light. So obviously it does work better if you're using other lights along with it, just because there's multiple light sources going into the camera. But that's just that one light, so it's very good for what it is. There's not really anything interesting on those shelves, it's just a load of fiction and non-fiction books and just shit I've got on there. Gas masks on one of the higher shelves, all along the shelves. Some of the lower shelves are just like storage boxes, some lighters up there where I have to make room for them. You know, there's not really interesting stuff on those shelves, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, if you're physically looking at the light in the room, Mike, it's not as good as a ceiling light. Like, you wouldn't want to light a room using one of these, but it's very good in terms of like video cameras picking up the light. I'll flick all the lights back on again now, just so it looks the best it's going to look on camera. But in terms of lighting, yeah, for what I want for video stuff, it's very good, because you can put that shining directly onto the stuff you want to show. And I've noticed my camcorder as well, where it autofocuses, the autofocus knows a lot more what it's doing when you've got that on, because I guess the soft diffuse light's hitting exactly what you want to get it to focus on. You mean like the AR-10, the battle rifle? I think it would have been a better choice for America than the M14, but America should have still gone with the FAL because they had a free production license for it, but there was an internal sabotage thing, so they didn't use the FAL. My favourite horror movie would be Della Morte Dell'Amore, also known as Cemetery Man, but that's a bit of an obscure one. It's more like a dark comedy than a straight-up horror film. No, if that's an anime or like a manga type thing, I've not seen it. No, I've not seen that either, T55. Is that the Lewis Machine and Tools one, like the modern British one? Well, I know it's American, but it's used by Britain, if that's the one I'm thinking of. It's meant to be very accurate, it's probably very good, but again, why did Britain throw away all the FALs when they could have kept those as a DMR, or, you know, use them as a stopgap for a DMR? No, I've not got any metal plate armour. If you mean like medieval or like modern, kind of like trauma plate kind of stuff, I've just got like Kevlar with stab protection in it. No, I've not read the Metro books. I've played the first 2 Metro games, and as I've said before, my opinion on Metro is sort of, it's alright. Not brilliant, not awful. Sturmgewehr 44, just simply because it's in a cartridge that's going to go further. As much as I know the F-15 is a better plane than the MiG-29, I visually prefer the MiG-29, but the Su-27 is obviously better choice than the MiG-29. But the F-15, I know actually in reality the F-15 is a much better plane, but personally I'd go an Su-27, but that's just because I like the aesthetics of it. Alright, yeah, well, I'll be on this live stream for another 30 odd minutes, maybe a little bit less than that. I'm going to go till 8 o'clock, and it's just about 7:30 at the moment. Yeah, they sold them off and destroyed them, for the most part. But, you know, it should have been kept in reserve full stop, especially when the L-85 was so dreadful to begin with. Well, the funniest joke I've heard will get me banned from YouTube, so I can't tell you that. Well, I wouldn't mind modern shields, Rich. Well, like modern reproductions of a lot of the medieval stuff, but in all practicality, because of the space and, you know, conditions for looking after them, the polycarbonate riot shields are just better in every way, really. I think shields are one of the things where the technology now is just so much better using modern plastics than it was using old metals. So obviously I wouldn't say no to having medieval reproduction shields, but I think in terms of practicality I'd much rather just have a modern riot shield. 1911 out of those, but as said, Browning High Power is my favourite out of all of the World War II and sort of Cold War pistols. Alright, see you, Jerry. Yep, both I think it was a 22 long rifle bolt action, no idea what the model was, and I'm pretty sure it was a 20 bore over-under shotgun. But this is going back years and years ago before I even did these YouTube videos, and that was before I actually had a real interest in firearms, sadly. So it was, you know, fired a couple of shots at them, because we used to know these people that lived in a farm, lived on a farm, but... You know, it's one of those things where if I was doing it again today, I'd definitely film it, but, you know, it was just one of those things where they'd go out with air guns and whatever else on their own property and shoot them. I'd assume probably somewhere like Finland or Switzerland, I would guess, Patrick. Oh, it's gone quiet again with no questions. I'd still say the Browning High Power is a better pistol. The thing is, the Tokarev round penetrates well, but that's mostly just because they used the steel, what's it, like, head to the bullet, rather than it being like a copper jacket. It was actually a steel jacket, or just a solid steel thing. If you watch some of like Paul Harrell's videos where he's testing modern 7.62 by 25mm cartridges against like modern 9mm and 45 ones, often they don't perform as well. It's just simply because the Soviets used metal heads, you know, as standard. It's like essentially like almost like their build quality of the World War II ammunition was to a higher standard, but the actual cartridge itself isn't as good. USA, obviously, just for the fact that the USA has the world's biggest army, the world's biggest, well, not necessarily the world's biggest land army, but the world's biggest, most professional army in a sense, and easily the world's biggest air force, the world's second biggest air force, and the world's biggest navy. I'll tell you what I watched recently on Shudder, Mike. I watched Leviathan, which is almost like a 3.5 hour long documentary about the making of the first two Hellraiser films. I can sort it by film, like the order of films I've watched. Hang on, let me get that up. I watched Maggie, that had Arnold Schwarzenegger in, that was okay. Wasn't brilliant. I think it's more of a sort of emotional kind of film. Blood on Satan's Claw, that was alright. The Revenant, that was like a comedy horror thing. I said to you, didn't I, about Society, the Brian Yuzna one, that was weird. But I haven't watched loads of stuff recently, actually. I'd assume probably the Springfields that have been tuned for it, just because 30-06 was the most powerful of the World War II standard rifle cartridges. Well, the thing is, you're not going to have a modern war where America ever attacks Russia. There might be like wars fought in other countries over something, but US is not going to attack Russia, and Russia is not going to attack the US. I find true crime quite interesting. Is it like a docudrama about Ted Bundy or what? Well, it depends. The swords are totally real, yeah. The rifles are deactivated, but real. So, they were once real military rifles, they are no longer. I did actually say earlier on this stream to people, I remembered to say it, don't forget to like and subscribe and all that sort of stuff, but I don't know how many people were actually on when I said it. You can work that out, walking memes, if you actually look at my username. You can get it to within a year. As I've said before, 40mm filters are going to totally depend on what you can get where you are. If you can get surplus filters in date or have very recently expired and are sealed properly, get those, as in military ones. Otherwise, go for ABEC P3 filters. It's not very hard to find those if you look around enough. It depends what you're willing to spend. But the beauty of getting a mask in 40mm NATO is you're not going to have any issue finding the filters for it. If you've got a question, just ask it. Don't say I've got a question. Yeah, what you have to do, Mike, is send me a thing on Twitter where you got those from or something similar, because I was thinking about including something like that in my videos, but I'd rather just get like pre-animated kind of ones I could insert rather than trying to animate something myself. Yeah, but that's just when you start getting old, isn't it? You start going, oh, kids today. No, I know about the SR-71, but I didn't know there was like a spin-off one of it. Yeah, cheers, Mike. I don't know if you heard this, because I don't know if it was before you came on the stream, but have you seen somebody's done a first-person mod for Resident Evil like 2 Remake, and it looks really good. So, because obviously I've got the PC version, I think I might install that. The next time I do a stream, I'll play a bit in first person. Bioshock 1 is very good. Bioshock 2 is Bioshock 2 is alright actually, but there's lots of things in it that some bits are better than the first game, the majority of it isn't as good as the first game. The Minerva's Den DLC for Bioshock 2 is very good though, in terms of both story and like gameplay. Bioshock Infinite I think is a bit crap, to be honest. There's some bits I like about Bioshock Infinite, but for the most part it's a story where they're trying to be too clever, and it doesn't really work. If you're interested in why, there's lots of videos that spend hours explaining all the plot holes in it and like why bits don't work. The Oddworld series is probably my favourite video game series. Well, the aspect ratio isn't different, as I've said before, it's just it's properly stretched the thing out at the moment. Read the description, Springtrap. That's the only warning I'm going to give you. Yeah, for £12 I don't think you can go wrong, because the first Bioshock is very good. Bioshock 2 is definitely worth it, I'd say, even if you only play it once. And then Infinite, if you're only paying £4 for it, yeah, why not? Is it the one, Mike, that has all the DLC thrown in as well? Because if it does, then it's a no-brainer, because it's obviously even more content in there for £12. So I think the HD remaster did have all of the content in, didn't it? Yeah, I just buy them on Steam, most of them. Or like some of the games I've got on physical discs. Do you remember those? Obviously I've got a load of console games from previous generations on DVD and like CD as well, but that's, you know, back when consoles was still a thing I'd be interested in at this point, you know. I think PS4s and Xbox Ones and that are good if you just want to literally buy a console and play games, but obviously for me, because I need a decently powerful PC for video editing and rendering anyway, it doesn't make sense to me not to have a gaming PC. Because when you end up buying hardware that's more powerful than the gaming PC's hardware anyway to render video, you might as well just have something that can play games for no extra cost on the same system, rather than then, you know, buying another system. You can literally get S10 masks on eBay, although at this point it's cheaper to get FM12s, I think, than S10s, and they're better masks than the S10. I've not seen that, Richard, but it might be interesting. What kind of falchion design is it? Is it like one of the, like, 2 of the surviving museum falchions? Or is it like a custom design? Which one's BO4? Alright, see you, Mike. You should, FM12s you should still be able to get in, well, I'll tell you out of the Call of Duty games I've actually played. World at War's better than any of those, and I like Black Ops 1, to be honest, better than any of those, but I've not got the newer ones because I've got no interest in them. But yeah, going back to what you said, the FM12 you'll be able to get easier than the S10 in the US because some US police forces use the FM12, so they'll have surplused them. So yeah, just get an FM12. Don't bother with an S10, get an FM12. You'll be able to get it cheaper and it's a better mask. Probably goes without saying, but anybody just making stupid comments is getting an instant block. I think a lot of them you won't see anyway because there's a spam filter, but when people just put like gibberish in the comments or like weird artwork, you know, I'm here to try and answer people's legitimate questions. If there's people spamming the chat with weird symbols, I can't concentrate as much on other comments, unsurprisingly. Oh, as I just said, get an FM12 if you haven't got one. You should be able to get them fine in the US now, for not too much money, and they're very good masks. Yeah, it does work well having that light there. So yeah, in all the videos from like about a month forward, you should start seeing that light on there, because obviously I film loads of videos in advance, but now I've got the light. Whenever I'm filming a regular video, I'm always going to use it if possible, just because it will make the video look better. That doesn't really make any sense to me though, because officially there are FM12s being made in America by the Avon version of the US and being used by US police forces, whereas as far as I'm aware, the S10 has never been officially used by the US. I've played the first Manhunt, the Rockstar one. Yep, you can buy FM12s on eBay. Okay, yeah, I know what the sort of design you mean then. Probably rich. Out of the ones I have the SHMS, but I think you asked me that last stream. No, only Elder Scrolls games. I've played 2, 3, Dark Spire, whatever it's called, that weird spin-off one, Oblivion, and Skyrim. I've not played the Elder Scrolls Online, I've not played Fallout 76, I have no intention of doing so. Don't know why, even if I feel quite awake before I start streaming, sometimes these streams make me tired, but I think it's just because I'm trying to stare at like a load of chat on the screen and everything, and then sort of be alert and keep responding to it. I had a cup of coffee before I started streaming, so there's not one here today. There's a placemat there, but I basically downed the coffee before I set the camera up and everything. Well, a Camelback is more useful, but I've actually got a load of canteens, just because, you know, canteens are more practical in terms of like the collecting aspect of them, but a Camelback is obviously like the more modern sort of equipment, because it, you know, spreads water more evenly across what you're wearing, and you know, I'm sure I'm sure I don't have to explain to you all the reasons Camelbacks are superior to canteens. The OM14 is actually a SHM41 copy, so if you want to know what the difference is between an OM14 and a SHM41, watch my video where I explain the difference between all those masks. Sadly, I think it's got to the stage now where I like coffee so much, you know, having like 50 to 100 mg of caffeine in a coffee doesn't do too much to keep me alert. I'm sure if I drank it right before I went to bed, you know, I wouldn't be able to sleep properly, but it doesn't really make me alert anymore. Again, yawning. Although yawning is actually getting carbon dioxide out of your lungs, isn't it? That's like the actual purpose of why the body does it. MUA masks aren't rare at all. No, I don't see why you'd need coffee tea bags. What's the point in that? Yeah, I like tea. I prefer coffee just mostly because coffee's higher in caffeine, and it's faster to make instant coffee than it is to make a cup of tea. But I'll happily drink either tea or coffee. I will say though, obviously buying cheap tea bags tastes better than it does buying cheap instant coffee, but I've sort of got an acquired taste for instant coffee now where, you know, even if it doesn't really taste like coffee, it will do me fine. Now I've got a gas mask in my car, which I keep just in case, because if you've got your own car, you're going to have plenty of storage room in it. It doesn't hurt to just keep a gas mask under your seat or the passenger seat. Especially if you're like me and you've got so many, then it helps free up a bit of room in your house. So I've got my FM12 set up with a filter in the car, if ever I need it. You can get MUA masks on eBay. If you're going to ask me where to get masks, the answer is always going to be eBay, like 99.9% of the time. Well, in the UK you can actually buy the M1 masks for about £20 at the most anyway, probably for like £10, but yeah, you're obviously going to get them cheaper there. Yeah, if you watch my helmet collection video, Oscar, you'll be able to see all my World War II helmets. They're included in that one. Because I've got... I'll tip it into frame, if I can. Actually, no, the cable's not going to let me. I'll just... let me just turn this to show you on the webcam. I have bought, for the purpose of all my videos now, a softbox light. So I've got it set up for the stream today just to kind of test it while streaming, but it means I can put it behind the camcorder in all my normal videos and the camera will focus better and the lighting will look better. What question in the description? If you mean about gas masks and eBay, that is in the description. I'd rather not get either of those two and just buy decent surplus stuff, to be honest, rather than brands from camping stores that cost way too much money. I've only got one FM12, I've got a CT12 as well, which is the rarer spin-off mask from it. And no, I've not seen that, but I don't really follow lots of meme kind of videos, Rich. FM12, as I've already said, just because it's a better mask, it's like the successor of the S10, so it's basically an S10 with design improvements. And as I've said before, because the surplus is getting harder to find of the S10 now, you've got surplus numbers of the S10 going down, you've got numbers of the FM12 going up, which means the price for the S10 is going up and the price of the FM12 is going down. So for that reason, obviously, if you can get the better mask for a cheaper price, do that. What kind of NVA winter jacket is it? Is it one of like the officer's coats or enlisted man's coats, or is it like one of the camo ones? I've seen Miltech, I think it is, do a reproduction of like the Strictarn parka, which I actually quite like the look of, but I don't really need to buy another military parka style coat because I've already got so many different, you know, like surplus coats and whatever, that it's just going to cost me money and take up more room, which, you know, isn't very practical. But I do like a lot of East German surplus, if that's what you're asking. Yep. Baben is totally correct if I pronounce his name right. That's a good one. Rewarding name, I'll have to have a think. Would I be able to bring back something like a genie's lamp that gives me free wishes? Because if so, something like that would probably be good, because then I can get free things I really want. Do you mean the GP9? That's the modern Russian panoramic mask. Or do you mean the modern Russian military mask? Because that's the PMK, and then it's got a name, hasn't it? Is it the PMK4, or is it called something else? But they are on eBay, they just cost a lot. I am not a fan of iced tea at all. I like tea hot. I've never understood the appeal of iced tea. I definitely like normal, like tea hot. Well, if ever I need caffeine for the sake of having caffeine, I've got 200 mg caffeine tablets over there in a big bag. So if ever I wanted to get really, you know, awake, I just take 2 of those caffeine tablets. Sometimes I even swig them back with coffee. And then you've got like 500 mg of caffeine in you at once, which isn't really good for you. But, you know, so it's not an issue me getting the caffeine, it's just I've become too immune to a lot of the caffeine stuff because I use it all the time. Hobnobs definitely, but I prefer like some of the off-brand hobnobs that are just normally called OTs. As I've said, I've got no interest in Metro Exodus, really. There's probably is military surplus around there that some of it might be a bit crap, but in general, if you're looking at stuff that's made for a consumer market, often not of very good quality compared to stuff that actually had to serve a function as military surplus, and the military surplus ends up being way cheaper, then I'd always go for the military surplus. Especially when it comes to a lot of jackets and trousers and things like that, where the civvy versions are essentially the same thing as the military ones, just without a camo pattern on or whatever, but they cost way more and they just feel cheaper. Yeah, sometimes I exceed 400 mg of caffeine in a single go. But that's the problem, isn't it? Because caffeine is technically a drug. And as much as a lot of people don't like to admit it, because they go, oh no, I never take any drugs, when they're people who drink alcohol and, you know, take caffeine and nicotine and whatever else. The thing is, with caffeine, is like with all these drugs, the longer you use it, the more immune you become to it, or, you know, the higher your tolerances get. So then you need more and more of it to have the same effect. So before I started drinking coffee, one coffee would keep me awake and alert for hours. Now coffee barely does anything for me at all, just because, you know. And I tell you what, if I go like a day without having coffee, or even probably like 6 hours, like if I wake up late and I've not had coffee, I get serious headaches and things like that from caffeine withdrawal. Caffeine is the closest I'd say I'm addicted to any substance. But, you know, it's not technically a drug, according to some people, so, you know, there's all that. But yeah, caffeine would be the hardest one for me to quit out of anything. They're all real rifles. I know what Bud K is, but we can't really buy from them in the UK. I can't play guitar very well. I've got 2 guitars, but I can't play them well. I quite like sort of stuff with ice cream, like chocolate brownie, like hot chocolate brownie with ice cream, or hot, like sticky toffee pudding with ice cream. Maybe a bit of custard as well. Well, you probably can buy from them, but it just works out more expensive because I'm not in the US. We've got loads and loads of coffee in the actual cupboard as well. So that's not a problem. We've got loads of instant coffee in the cupboard. You can eat instant coffee raw if you really want to. It's horrible if you do that, but I have done it before. You know, if you just want a caffeine hit really quickly. Between 90 and 100. The original PMG or the PMG2. The original PMG isn't that brilliant because it has like this rubber filter intake thing, and it takes a filter on the side, so it kind of pulls down to one side because of the weight of the filter on like the bit of rubber. The PMG2 is the GP5M, like an improved GP5 design. I'd say that's actually the better mask. Not in my room, no. I'd be a bit worried if there was somebody in my room. Right, anyway, it's been about an hour. It's gone 8 o'clock, hasn't it? Yeah, it's just gone 8 o'clock. So I'll wrap this stream up now. If there's any very quick questions, I don't mind answering them. That's cool, Peach. So is it one where you actually just put your archery target on it and then you can fold it back down when you're not using it? I've already answered that one if you weren't listening. It's the shumps. Right, I'll tell you what T55, that will be the last question before I end the stream. So let's have a look. Right, so the next video, as in the next one that goes up, the one that goes up tomorrow, it's a video on the wooden bokken I've got, comparing it like weight and handling wise with a katana. So if you're not into swords, you won't find it interesting, but for the people who complain that I do too many gas mask videos or whatever, they probably will find that interesting. Then the video after that one is me getting a NATO filter to work properly on a GP5, which definitely might interest some people. So yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. I'm going to have to pack this big light away now because obviously it takes up a lot of room. So yeah, thanks for watching. As I said, I've just finished.